more, that is your choice. But you'll print 2. You will also print 2 posters. And this is what we're going to discuss very quickly tonight. And the posters are electronically created. 4, I'm sorry, 4. Because we always have 3 on a panel, that's the minimum, but oftentimes we'll have 4 on a panel. So these 4 posters are laid in front of each faculty member for their review. Your poster is electronically projected on the screen. It is also a hard copy that is visually for each faculty member on the panel. So, with that said, let me give you an example of, this happens to be, and I really hope you can read these. And let me, this is an example of Corey Zancanilla's poster from last summer. And there are specific sections that I want you to refer to in your handbook, the SNC handbook, page 40 and 41. Page 41 actually has a visual of all of the areas that are to be included in this poster. Page 41. Also, tomorrow I will send out some samples, some of the samples that I am showing you. I'll send out some electronic samples for you to use as you create your posters. Looking at page 41 of your, I had it right here. Thank you so much. Thank you. Looking at page 41 of the SNC handbook, as I mentioned, it gives you an exact visual with instructions for the layout, the format of this poster. So at the top is the title. Again, project title. Now, depending on your space, you can put your name under the title, or you can put it down here, or you can put it in a bubble in the corner, or maybe in the middle. Don't forget the title. You will include the name of the college, which is Sierra Nevada College, and you'll include fall 2019 for our semester. You do not need commas in between your name, the Sierra Nevada College, or after Sierra Nevada College or your name. No commas. Just space it appropriately. It is your choice how you want to set this up, but do keep in mind we read from left to right. And so this student has put in the project goals first. I know this is really hard to see from far away, but I will send you most definitely an electronic sample. Project goals. First primary goal, secondary project goal. Where do you think you will find your project goals? In your proposal. A lot of this is from your proposal. It's pretty simple. A lot of it is just cut and paste from your proposal. So this is why, again, it is very important that you saved the very final copy of your proposal that Beth and I approved during the spring semester. So you're just going to copy and paste primary project or primary goal and the secondary goal. Then the abstract. The abstract again will be the copy and paste from your project that you have been creating. And I'm sure that is still a bit of a rough draft. I would assume it's a bit of a rough draft until you have finalized your project. Again, here is our citation. This time, the citation is about you. This is about Corey Zancanella, her name, the year, the title of her project. It's called an unpublished master's professional project. You know this. Your project director has corrected this. Then, here's your text. Notice hanging indent. Notice no paragraph indent in the text of the abstract. Exactly as you wrote it on about page 5 or 6 in your project. Next is your professional questions and rationale. Yes, okay, got it, all right, thanks. Your first question, second question, comes from your proposal. But this is the only part that you really need to create. This is not a cut and paste or copy and paste in that your first question, for example, Corey said, how can specialist teachers integrate the arts into physical science instruction to enhance learning for upper elementary, grades 3 through 5 students? Now, she asked the question, professional question, now this is the rationale, this is the answer. You need to answer that question. You also, if you will notice on page 41, it mentions that in the professional questions and rationale, each answer must contain 1 to 2 citations from your references. If you reference authors, researchers here, please be certain that in your references they're included. Because your references are what drove your project. They are going to be the most prominent research that you read, the ones that impacted you the most, the ones that affected you. Jumping down to the references you'll need maybe 2, at least 2, maybe 3, but you may not have room for 3. So pick carefully. Make certain that these references are included in your answers, because you're telling us these are your best from your research and they are the most impacted. Therefore, include them in your answers. Michael?
I would just like to interject at this point that one might be surprised that very often the answer does not address the question.
Very often.
And it is rather surprising since the question is pretty direct and straightforward, but we're reading the response and it's not there.
It's not there.
Yeah.
So keep reading your question and make certain that your answers are answering that question. Most definitely. So she says, how can specialist teachers integrate the arts? The arts can provide concrete visuals for students to represent and explain physical science concepts, etc. So she's definitely addressing her question in the first question. The second question, again, state your question and then answer it. You will also need to include references. Include 1 to 2 citations in your answers to your professional question. And notice that oftentimes students will use a left indent, and it's without taking this question, and I like to see it centered. I recommend that you center it because it stands out. If you have all of your text with a left hand margin, it's difficult to read and it becomes a bit cluttered. So I would definitely maybe even highlight, maybe even put your question in another color, but center it, or what? Darken it, exactly, bold it, whatever you want to do. The fun part of the poster is it's your creativity, and oftentimes students make them, it is your choice, but they make them compatible and similar to the format, the colors that you used in your project. So, center this, make it stand out somehow from the text of your answer. The references again, with a hanging indent, make certain that you're referencing correctly. Going back to your 628 days of writing your annotations. Again, use 1, 2, maybe 3, depending on the room you have. Laureen.
On her references, she has quite a deep indent. Do we need to have it quite that far?
You don't need to do that.
Okay.
I think she was trying to fill her box so that the boxes were equal. APA says for your hanging indent, 5 to 7 spaces. I usually say 5, but that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. She's on her 8th.
Yeah.
She is on her 8th, so maybe 5 is about appropriate. Because on this poster, what's going to be an issue is space. That's going to be your issue. Then, the standards, and I'm going to give you, hopefully, an example of another poster that you might see more clearly, a little larger if I can. Let's try, our posters come in so many delightful looking. The polka dot, right, I was gonna go for the polka dot. The polka dot was Denise's. Where is Denise? Well, here's one. This is quite colorful, and hopefully,
Zoom out on the bottom.
yes,
Right there, yeah.
right here.
Okay.
Go.
Other one.
Oh, too much. Just. What I wanted to show you was your choice of colors. This student did a background, which is delightful, and it was very colorful and creative, but with the white printing, okay, Taryn's going, no. It's kind of hard to read. So, you have to be your best judge. Very well done. It was diving into reading and writing skills for dyslexic students. It was a beautiful poster. And I have it right here.
Actually, an exercise of parent.
But here is the hard copy of this poster. So your choices are a bit challenging, and if you need help, Paulette is the best. Give her a call, go see her, and talk to her about what colors you might want to choose, background colors, etc., to match the project colors of your manual. And you can see it's, even if you are up close, a little difficult to read the white printing. So, almost got it.
Suggest that should be done.
I'm not going to suggest it.
No, Paulette.
Oh, Paulette will definitely. Paulette won't suggest. Paulette will tell you. Definitely. She is hysterical, most definitely. But, for example, and see, this is really difficult to see for you, but going over to the standards, there will be the 3 sections of standards. The first one is your professional organization. This happens to be the IDA, the International Dyslexia Association. Her professional standard and principle. Professional organization is at the top. The second one is the INTAS standards. And the third one is your content standards. California, then you'd be California Common Core. If you are Nevada, NVACS, you may even be using SEL, Social Emotional Learning from Washoe County School District, if your project is going in that direction. But the first standard is always your professional organization from your proposal. The second one is the INTAS, and the third is the content standards. This student has her project goals down here. That's your choice, but that's a little difficult. You might want to start with your project goals of your project when you're presenting your poster. So think about how you want to present, the order that you want. Looking at page 41, in creating your poster, we recommend, it's your choice, but we recommend the abstract is on the left. Professional questions and rationale, since that takes up a great deal of text, to put that in the middle. Project goals, right under your abstract, your references under these standards. Your choice. For example, they can be bright. Let's see if I can find Denise's, Lorraine. It's not on this chapter. Like, they can be as, give me 1 second.
Is the comic book one there?
Yes, it is. I'll show you.
Talk about color.
Talk about color. So they can be very classic, like your project, very simple, light colors, or they can be, where's the, here it is. This is very old, but an excellent example of creativity and color.
Wow.
So,
That's
yes.
cool.
let me, let's see, let me go.
Yeah, it looks like a comic book. Yeah.
So here is his project, Comics in the Classroom, and supplementary 9th grade language arts instruction with comic books, a resource guide for teachers. I've showed this every semester. It's an excellent project. This was the project from 628 where he had the annotation that was from 1942. I think I mentioned this to you, which followed the history of the introduction of Superman, superheroes, which I allowed him to use the 1942 annotation because it kind of shadowed our society and our history. It was fascinating. And also, it seems like superheroes are back again, which is interesting, and so many movies, but an excellent supplemental resource to engage low-level readers with high-interest reading material. So he followed the comics in the classroom, and here's some of his lesson plans, as you can see. This took him hours to create, but also it took Paulette, I think Paulette stayed till 7 o'clock that night. Will got to Paulette's at 8 in the morning, and they worked because every page had to be created individually. Anyway, but it's quite an interesting project of content value, but also visual appeal, most definitely. This may be a little busy for you, and that is your choice. But again, he had to kind of work the requirements, the components, so that his background could be viewed. Terrence?
But we are not highlighting the initiative connections on the poster.
We are not.
Okay. Will they address that in the presentation?
They will address it in their presentation. Thank you for reminding me of that, exactly. And we're gonna have to, as a department, we're gonna have to work on that and see how we will implement that into the poster, if it even needs to be done. Not quite certain. Pardon?
What's the question? I didn't hear.
Oh, are we going to include the initiative connections in the visual poster? We are not going to do that. I will discuss that with you when it is time for you to present your project.
Cheryl, you'll send us a couple of copies of those posters.
Very much
Thank you.
so,
Thank
yes,
you.
quite a few for you to follow, exactly. There is no other college where you get more support than at SNC.
It's true.
Kelly, does UNR do this for them?
No.
Do they provide a one-on-one?
any of this.
No.
Nobody's gonna help you with this.
They
kind of
don't
stuff.
provide a one-on-one project director. They do not provide samples. It's just write it, turn it in, and you pass or you fail, and that's it. And I got my master's at UNR. I loved it. But with that said, let's take a look at, I'm going to pass out, I'll look for the polka dots. I'll find the polka dots. It's probably on my computer at home. I'll send that to you. It was a primary project, therefore polka dots on the poster and the project. These are presentation printing notes from the printer, from Rick's Printing. Rick's Printing is located on Kitski. If you're coming north or south on 580 off at Mill Street, go west, then you're going to turn right onto Kitski, immediately onto Kitski. And there's like a car dealership on the corner, and then there's a sporting goods store that's been there forever. It's called Mark IV and Strike, and they have a huge Target, like an archery target, not like Target stores, but an archery target with, I think it's an elk.
I think it's an elk.
Is it an elk? Chris, I never know what that stuffed creature is, but it's on top of the target.
I assumed it was bronze, I don't know.
I don't know. Oh, it might be. Obviously it is. It's not taxidermy. It wouldn't have lasted this long. Most definitely. Anyway, they are in the same parking lot. So there's like a car dealership, Mark IV and Strike, and then you turn right. It's just a few hundred feet after you turn right onto Kitski going north is Rick's Printing. It's a long building with several sun-shaded windows. You'll see it. Only ask for Paulette. Paulette is really funny in that her staff has told me when I call, they say, whoa, you're from SNC? I can't talk to you. Only Paulette handles SNC students, and she does. Anyway, Taryn, you had a good experience with Paulette.
Oh, she's amazing. Yeah, she's really wonderful. I had a couple of little snafus that I didn't even anticipate, and she at one point, like, I just drove down there and she was like, this is going on and this is going on. She printed out multiple copies and didn't charge me for them, which was so sweet of her.
Yes.
I mean, you're really balling on a budget when you're a grad student, and she
Yep.
like understands that. And at one point she was just like, here dear, and she like gave me her chair and she let me go into her computer, which she was like, I don't let anyone touch my computer, but I'll let you do it.
Right.
Like go in
And she does
do what
that.
I needed to, and then she printed the whole thing out until it was just as both of us agreed upon. So I'm just as totally.
And that's really important, Taryn. I'll say it now very quickly. When you pick up your final pieces for your presentation, don't leave the printer until you go through it and make certain that everything is correct. I've gotten so many calls late at night. I just got home and there's a page missing, or I found an error. Paulette can fix it right there on the spot. Do not leave. Yes. Miriam.
Do you need to make an appointment?
You know what, it would be best because they are actually architecture, engineering, and construction. That's basically what they do. Give her a call, and here's some printing information, and I've also copied her business cards on there, so you will have her number. Give her a call, send her an email, and maybe set something up. And I don't want this to happen, but if you are running out of time, your project finally has been corrected by you and your project director, and you rush down to Rick's Printing, they would like a day at least or two lead time, but they've printed them in an afternoon for them. I do not recommend, and unfortunately we've had some students that have done this. They are presenting in the afternoon and they're printing in the morning. And they walk in and they are rattled beyond expectations. They are so, they're so rattled, literally. They are so frustrated, they're so stressed that their presentation is not of the quality that we are expecting. It's not sequential, it's not in-depth, it's not of value. So, with that said, that's between you and your project director to make certain that when your project director gives you final approval to print, that you have enough time to do that. Again, we have a really small window because the projects come out of technical review on December 2nd, and that following week, we will be presenting. I think it's 9, yeah, the 9th to the 13th, exactly. So it's kind of a crunch, Taryn.
Yeah, I would say something we did with my last student that worked really well was the second we got it out of tech review. So first, it's first project in is the first project out of tech review. So if you can get it in, earlier, that's always a positive. And then the second that you get it back, sit with your project director, go through it. I had her make her edits to like the first 20 or so pages of her project. And she had already been in communication while the project was in tech review with Paulette. And then when we got that chunk of it for sure done, she sent it in and just said, hey, is there anything that you see, anything that you think I need to be aware of? And Paulette was happy to do that and send it back. So while I'm making the final review of her tech review edits and going back and forth with Cheryl, Molly on the other end was making sure that she was getting printing set up before, so that when she got green light, it was like that. She was done, ready to go.
I mean, you can start talking to them now to Paulette about color and format, etc. And also if you have some computer questions, they definitely can answer that. She does have some designers that work there. Most definitely. Please know that at the end of every semester, I take her Pepsi, I take her chocolates, I take donut, I take everything I can because I am so grateful. They look forward to us coming. Jim helps me carry them in. And
send her a thank you card. She appreciates it. Send her a thank you card. She appreciates it.
And yes, exactly. She really, really does. And she also tells me about any students that are grouchy. Let me tell you. Now, I know they're stressed, Cheryl, but this one was not polite, and this one was very polite. So don't give her your attitude, but she will give it back to you, and then I will hear about it, okay? Anyway, you'll love her. She's hysterical. Anyway, yes.
Okay, so it says for the presentation folder or poster, it needs to be in PowerPoint. What about
Key point. No, you're right. Good. I was getting that.
What about the book? How do we?
The book is however you've created it.
Because it'll be a PDF?
It's gonna be a PDF.
Gotcha.
It's
Okay.
gonna be PDF. When you send your project and you send your poster to the printer, it has to be in PDF. It'll come out wonky. So, PDF to Paulette. But that's my next point. Very quickly, it mentions in this handout the size that you are going to create your poster. This poster, I'll use this because it's so visible. It's 11 inches by 17 inches, finished size. You can create it in PowerPoint, you can create it in Keynote. You can even create it, I think, in Canva now. I'm pretty sure. Am I correct?
In what?
Can you, Melissa? Good.
What did you say?
You can
Canva.
download it and then put it into the PowerPoint, which might be a safer way to do it.
Okay, got it. There's several ways to create this, but you're going to create one slide only. So I'll talk about PowerPoint. That's the most typical and the easiest. You're going to go in and you're going to design, and it says at the bottom of that, a customized size, because it will then give you the area to create your text. So you're going to create a 16.5 by 10.5 inches. Not 11 by 17, because that's gonna be your finished product. And what is preferable is then a white border will appear, and it'll give your poster a finished product appearance. Okay, any questions?
As I'm picking up the layout, just to confirm, when they print it, it will be double-sided, correct?
That's your choice.
Okay. Because
That
I'm just
is-
thinking, like, I think it'd be weird, like, lesson, whatever ended here and lesson, whatever started there.
Except that, you're absolutely right.
But then you're paying for more pages.
You are paying for more pages, so that's a thought. I personally, when I was teaching, and I had my plan. Here's Molly's with Taryn. I had my lesson plan book open. I wanted it open so I could read each side.
In the same way, so that's why I'm,
It's your
Okay.
choice. She did not do it this way. See
Okay.
how much thicker hers is?
Okay.
Also, I think Paulette said it's $4.50 now for binding. This bothers me. That's my opinion. You do what you want. Rob?
You don't want, can we put like an empty page in between if like, you know, we have just like a little bit of something and we don't want the next thing just to be printed right underneath
You can
it?
do that, but you have
Does
to
it
count it.
Does it count
It's
against our
counted,
page?
right.
Yeah.
It may, for example, here's page 68, then here's page 68 in Molly's project. 68, empty, 69, so it's sequential.
Yeah.
Or you can put a page number on the blank page. It's your choice. Paulette can answer those questions for you. I definitely recommend binding it like this. An option is to bind it as Will did, but as you well know, we're teachers, the pages are coming out already. They're splitting. So I don't recommend this. Use, oh yeah, definitely. Definitely orphans and widows. We've talked about this, you know about this from 628. When you go through your project, before you save it to a PDF, make certain that you don't have any orphans or widows. Orphans down at the bottom of the page, just one line by itself. It's like it's hanging there. And a widow at the top of the next page, it's the last sentence or the last phrase of the previous page. It just looks awkward. So balance your pages. Also, make certain when you set it up, what you've done in your formatting, you need room for this binder. So this left-hand side is going to need to have a bit of a margin, at least 1/4 of an inch, and it is included in that description here. To give yourself on the left margin a bit of about 1/4 of an inch for the binder. Okay. Did you guys not get this?
I got it, I just didn't know.
Okay, got it. All right, that's the poster. We can talk about it later. Let's look at the standard matrix. Now. Oh, Scotty, thank you. Thank you for saying that. Do not go home and start working on your poster. Your priority is your project. Your priority is your project. Look at, I'm on page 21 of the syllabus. Under the date of October 30th, it says, the last sentence, while project is in technical review, create the electronic poster and submit it to the project director for approval. When you create, okay, good. When you create your poster, do it when your project is in technical review. Otherwise, you know what happens? Your project comes out of technical review and you haven't done your poster yet. Now you're trying to correct your poster or create your poster and correct your project all at the same time. You'll actually enjoy some downtime while your project is in technical review, and you'll also hopefully be a little more rested and more creative in creating your poster. This poster shouldn't take you more than a few hours, 4 or 5 hours, depending on your creativity. You can play with it a little bit now to take a break from your project, but your priority now is your project. All right, questions?
About what?
We have this body language.
About the pages, what if
Yes.
it makes sense, can you have a combination, what if it makes sense for your lessons to have like two that are open to each other,
Mhm.
because they make sense there?
Back to
But then the
back.
next one doesn't make, that, it makes more sense for that one to be blank, but then,
You can do that, it's your choice. It really
because
is.
if, like, let's say
Dana.
if it's a vocabulary part, like a
Right.
vocabulary, because it's the end of the lesson or something, or
Right,
whatever it is. And then you don't necessarily want like the next lesson starting right next to that, because that might look a little strange. But
And it
let's start
might-
the next two on the.
and Paulette will be certain that it doesn't bleed through. Say the color of your topic page of your lesson doesn't bleed through to maybe a white handout page.
Right,
I get you.
okay.
So maybe your handout, because you're gonna duplicate it, make
Mhm.
copies, you'll just want to make a white page, and then the back side of your handout could be white.
Okay.
Okay, good question, very good question. Okay, Taryn.
I know something that we had talked about before was, widows and orphans, but also, okay, so I have a text box that is maybe only taking up the top of the page, and then I have all this space down below, and I don't have anything that's gonna come until the next page. The suggestion was always to find something to fill it with. Maybe it's a graphic that kind of goes with the theme of your project, but don't leave a whole bunch of blank space, even if you have a colored background. Just fill that empty space with something that's appeasing to the eyes.
And thank you for saying that, Taryn, because your project will come back from technical review and they'll say, too much white space. Because we're going after visual appeal. Obviously, your content is extremely important to your project, but the visual appeal, which is fun for you, I will hope. Oh, okay, as you roll your eyes, okay. Gotcha, yeah. So much fun, so much fun, part of the creativity. All righty, Rob, are you scratching your head or thinking of a question?
I'm constantly scratching my head.
Okay.
So what you said, like what if it's a writing prompt or something and that's your material for your lesson? So that's where the student would record their response, or is that too much blank space? Should I put a little watermark in the background to make it interesting?
No, we're talking about like your lessons.
Lessons.
Like what the teachers are gonna be looking at versus like what you're gonna be handing out to students. That's
Okay.
obviously a place for.
Like your handout
And put in
might,
lines for them, so, because
Ask-
they'll end up writing.
right, they're gonna ask the student a question and you've given them all this space to write their
Or
answer.
give them a box so
A
that
box,
it
yeah.
indicates like, this is where your answer goes.
Okay.
You could do that, so it's not just so much of a blank white space. Amber.
I guess, I feel like you've answered this, but, so like the initiative connections, like title page, like those title pages, those do not need to be technically APA with double space. Cause right now mine is like taking the whole, I don't know, it just looks stupid, double space. It doesn't need to be double space?
Is it one word?
No.
It's, okay.
I'm
Can
trying
you
to,
show-
yeah.
Can you show it to me? Because
Yeah.
your title page you want to be visually appealing, but not so
It-
cluttered that people are trying to figure out what it
Yeah.
says.
I'll find it.
Right, okay, good. Yes, show me an example. Okay, the last thing that I want to discuss tonight is the standards matrix. And that is, if you're using Microsoft Word, you would go into insert, and then you would go into tables, and then you can insert a table that you create on your own, or if you scroll all the way down, there's actually a standards matrix that you can use. It's right there, and you can use it in tables. Insert tables, and then scroll down to standards matrix. Or you can create your own. So, I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna show you the standards matrix. It's very plain. It actually had color in it, but when I scanned it, it doesn't show a light blue color. But here is the standards matrix, a basic standards matrix. I'll read this to you because it's hard to read from the back. At the top, standards matrix, Nevada Academic Content Standards, NVACs, tell us where they came from. And then up here, at the top of your matrix, the top of your graph, are all of the standards that you used throughout your project. You may need 1 page, you may need 2 pages, depending on how many standards you have. I have here included what the acronym, I guess you would call it, stands for. So RF is Reading Foundational Skills, IT is Informational Text, RL is Reading Literature, SL Speaking and Listening, and W is for Writing. This is for a second grade phonics reading project. Very simply done. Across the top are the standards. Going down are the names of the lessons in sequential order. And then it's just a graph. Rhyming with Miss Mary Mack was a reading foundational skill. Oh, it's kindergarten, excuse me. K2A, and so she put an X in the box. It's just a simple graph. It's a matrix.
Do you want us to separate our academic and our professional standards, or do we include the professional standards in the matrix?
No professional standards.
Does that?
And you really don't have any professional standards in your project.
Okay.
You are not using your professional organization or your INTAS standards in your project. You may need them, we can talk about that individually, but what we want to see is your content standards from your lessons. Rob?
I have both content and professional development standards.
That's right.
So
So
do I
you,
do 2 matrices?
you might, that might be the easiest, unless they're too small or too few, then one of your standard matrix is gonna look kind of.
So if it's really big, can it pop out? Like, can it go like this if you open the page? You know, can it be like, here's mine?
Phew. Phew. I would say yes, and it's very creative, Rob, but when it gets scanned or printed, but when it gets the electronic version, it can't pop out. It's not.
So it is possible to have it looking somewhat different than this. If you have standards from different types of places, you can make 2 different,
Absolutely.
or whatever
Creative
looks
house.
appealing and just get the message across, right?
So, here's visually appealing. And I know Anton wants to do this because he loves the sunflowers.
They make you dizzy.
So here is Karen, very quickly. She did exactly the same thing, except hers is broken up into the first phase, which was like a professional development.
Yeah.
So Rob, you could do it this way, or
Okay.
separate pages. It depends on how many you have. So here's her professional development phase, which you call the planning phase, Taryn. Then her second phase was phase 2 of lessons, correct, the planning phase? And then the last section was the assessment phase. I'll send this to you. But you can see, here are the standards, the NGSS going across with the lessons and which boxes checked refers to the sequence, the coming together of the standard and the lesson. In each lesson.
So in my, I guess this would be for the initiative, is it initiative?
The initiative?
The initiative. But if I'm using standards from my initiative, would I just put that into the initiative, or would it go in my standards?
You can do both. Let's see what it looks like.
It would be a lot of, because I have two subjects, I'm combining math and art. So I
Right.
have both those content standards, and then I have the 21st century standards, and then I have the SEL standards.
So depending on how much room you have, you could have 4 matrices, or you could have 2, if you could get them. It depends.
To play around with it.
Depends. Yeah, math and art.
Well, because I'm combining them if I could look nice. They're like together.
Exactly. And it would maybe make sense.
Yeah, and so then I would save the initiatives to the next,
Right.
the initiative matrix.
Right.
And do I use those standards in the initiative matrix, or do I just say SEL, 21st century learner, IB?
Let's look at that.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's what I
exactly.
would see. So it just seems like it might be, it seems to me that it's gonna turn into one for the content standards, one for SEL, one for 21st century, one for or maybe divide it like this, because I won't have 3 pages.
But you might have, you could have 2 sets
Yeah.
with 1, 2, 3, 4.
I think you need to get your project.
Yeah, but that's, yeah. Amber?
So what I've been wondering is like, when I do my proposal, I use 2 standards, like content standards.
Right,
They're PE-based of it. So
Right.
my matrix is literally an X like every lesson for both standards. And
they're included, but I'm sure you have other
But that's what I'm saying,
standards.
but my
Yeah.
understanding is, so if I pick like a speaking, listening
Right,
standard,
for one of
do
your
I
lessons.
need to list that in like my objectives and then I need to be like assessing them on it, or can I just like list it as like a skill we'll be utilizing in the lesson?
It can also be considered foundational that, I mean, I feel like those standards are
Does that make
embedded,
sense?
and so
Let me look at
she
that.
can list it, but
Because like I
it
said,
looks
it's worried if I
minimal.
list it, then I have to like
It
truly
has-
assess them on the speaking, listening, or whatever I pick.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Not necessarily.
Yeah, no.
Okay, I can just list it as like
It is-
objective, students will blah, 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 blah.
I was thinking as part of your objective, your goals, etc.
Well, okay, I
Yeah.
thought I would have to like then include
SEL
that in my like
is
formative and summative assessment, and that's why I haven't been like.
Well, there's-
You may or may not,
Yeah.
but you're gonna have it on your standards matrix.
Right.
For
Okay.
sure,
Okay,
definitely.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, I don't need to close it.
Sarah, you had a question?
I know we're just trying to figure
Okay,
it out, but she
connected.
turn it out.
Rob, you had a question?
No, this time I'm just actually.
Okay, this time it's a real stretch. Okay, so the most important thing is, I'm going to go back to that other standards matrix so that maybe you can see that a little bit more closely. I am very picky about this, and so is our, I might have gotten out of it. I'll just explain it very quickly. And so are our professional editors. In your lesson, the front page of your lesson, you spell out the standards. Washoe County School District, Reading Found, or not Washoe County, SEL, or Nevada Academic Content Standards, NVACS, the acronym, and then you say Reading Foundational. Then you put the acronym, RF, for Reading Foundational. The reason you spell it out completely in the lesson is so that it can then go on your standards matrix with just the number or the acronym. You don't have to spell it out because you obviously don't have any room
Yeah.
on your standards matrix for that. Okay. Now that I've totally overloaded your disk, have you had a chance to think about your initiatives and how you're going to organize that? Anybody have any comments they would like to make regarding that?
I can share.
Please.
Our math, and I think that one of you guys who's doing math too. Maybe you. Are you using math practices?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
I am using,
In homework.
yeah, those are like 6 paragraphs long though. Do we really have
Your
to?
math practices are 6 paragraphs long?
Well, it's like attend to precision and then it
Right.
explains the definition of precision and exactly
Right.
what that means in a mathematical context. So do I put attend to precision or do I put
I was wondering the same thing
the
too.
entire thing?
Did you find this thing on the Washington County School District website? This thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was.
I had encouraged her to, after the note to teacher, to put those complete definitions on a page by itself. And then that you would state the standard or the math practice below your regular standards, before your objectives. Because hers is first grade, I've encouraged her to, when that math practice is introduced in the lesson, to then refer to it so the teacher understands that those math practices, where they are within the lesson.
And then I
Okay,
put them
so
on
we
my,
put a
Pardon?
little blurb on the side that says.
Well, it would just be,
This
just
is-
like the MP2
Yeah,
is what
this is
like,
MP.2 or
Yeah.
whatever. Okay.
I mean,
that
that's how it would
That's
make sense
fine.
to us, like that. You don't have to call it out again if it's in the front pattern.
Exactly, and that's why we do it on that front lesson plan page.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
it's
like,
explained.
still calling them out, still like listing them on the front page,
Right.
but then just the numbers inside, in the lesson.
Right, as long as you've spelled it out somewhere first, which is obviously under standards on your first opening page of your lesson.
So
Really
we-
important.
We could do a page of just like, these are all the standards that are happening in this unit spelled out, and then in the lessons, just have the tag.
No, I want it spelled out on the lesson page itself,
All 6.
all 6, right.
So in all 6, it's gonna say reading foundations, RF. It's not
Right.
just ever gonna say just RF.
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
so you're not putting the whole definition again, but you're putting that header that allows, if she needed to go back to that very first page and read more.
For just the math practice ones,
go
but
with
for
Well,
content
wait.
standards, that's what I mean.
Oh, yeah, no, for content
For content
standards, sure.
standards, you spell it out every time, but any other standard you're using,
You would just say precision.
you would say MP2, attend to precision.
I wasn't gonna even write that, I was just gonna put the number.
Well, I think that's, we're here.
Is that what, that's what, oh.
No, I'm talking about though, under, when you have your standards before you have your objective,
Yeah.
if this is a math practice like a standard, I would put it right below as a math practice.
Right.
And what the blurb is, not the whole definition, but the identifying words and the MP2 or whatever it is.
Okay.
With the standards, and then within the lesson, you
Some
want to
other
identify it.
page. On some other
Does that make
page, there'll
sense?
be the huge explanation of them.
The first page of your lesson will be the definition and the title, acronym, definition of the standard. Where it says, under your required lesson components, it has the title, the grade, the time, etc., standards. Your opening page, I'm looking for a good example. So here, it's hard to say, but she's got Nevada academic content. This is the opening page of her lesson. It's lesson 4. And here is the Nevada academic content standards index, reading standards, foundational skills, and then she has RF3 for reading, foundational skills, and then she defines it.
Okay, but
So
then
this
you
is on the first page.
But then you said for the math practice standards, which are like
I've got a
2
copy here.
paragraphs long,
Okay,
I have to spell that out every single lesson.
I need to see that page. This is it. Let's see the,
That's it.
oh, these.
Yes.
Okay, where are these spelled out?
On
On
that
the
page.
Washoe County website or the.
No, I'm sorry, in your book.
That's the question, is do
Okay.
you want them like all as a glossary almost? And
We
then
could.
just,
Let me look
it would
at
just
it.
be
Wouldn't that be like
practices that
explaining
take
how
decisions
to
or
change the
refer back to state
Somewhere it needs, you're right, somewhere it needs to be
But
listed.
not every lesson.
No,
is that.
not every lesson, but let's figure out where it needs to be put.
Right, we can put it in the front, we can put it in the back.
Back, right, but preferably the front, so that the reader is familiar as they begin.
I guess I have a similar but different question, Cheryl, that might be way too specific.
Yeah,
But so my question was obviously pretty broad, and overall there were like 21 suggestions. But some of them are as simple as, if possible, take the lesson outdoors, acknowledge students.
okay,
Is that something that I need to, because I kind of was like, I personally need to visually see it on the matrix. But can I just say like my note to teachers, like, consider always, taking them outside or acknowledging them for X, Y, and Z reason? Or do I need to say that every single lesson? Because that seems ridiculous.
I know, it's redundant,
Yeah,
but
yeah, so.
is that always an option? Obviously, because you're.
Yeah, but I mean, like, some of them are like far more specific, like partner, they call it partner interventions. Like that, to me, I'm going, that's, but something that says, like, encouragement, because there's so much reason for it. I don't really need to say, we need to encourage students. Like, do you think those simple ones, do I really need to state at the beginning of the lesson?
And you could do almost like a heads up, a note to teachers, or a little info at the beginning of the lesson.
Because like right now, after my note to teachers, I just was like, consider, at the end of my note to teachers, I said, consider the following strategies that have been proven to be
Okay,
beneficial.
so.
And then I have like all 21 of them explained, it's that.
That might work, let me look at it. That
So
might
it's not very
work.
edited draft.
Right, that might work.
Okay.
Lynn?
So we're struggling with the initiative.
Right.
Where, well, I looked up the Nevada Board of Ed, and under programs, they had a list of programs that
Right.
they're implementing in the
Oh, good.
For, I mean, she's in the state of California.
Yeah.
Where does she find, the initiatives that might be going into the high school that she's looking at, or the school she's looking at?
Because I know where they are in Nevada. I know. Listen.
As far as looking for, so I know the school needs to do this, I don't know
SEL, obviously they have technology implemented.
Is 21st century popular?
Yes.
It's getting a lot of popularity at Washoe.
That's
I don't know if
good.
it's California.
So,
Okay.
where do I send her for the margins? And then,
We'll have to research, yeah.
MTSS, Liz,
That's kind of challenging.
Liz, are you guys using
Let's look at
MTSS?
that, Liz.
MTSS?
That's good.
Like MTSS is, no? Ask, look it up and ask, because I bet you are. That's a national movement. MTSS, yeah, it's multi-tiered system support, and that's like normal, like everyone's doing that all over the country. Yeah, it's differentiation, and it's, and that's huge.
Is it relatively new?
I do it.
No, it's old. It's been around for a long time. But it's a national movement, and it's one that almost everyone's doing, and it ties in really easily with most academic content standards. So regardless of what you're doing, it's like, oh, if you could use MTSS, it's like it would be the easiest thing to stick in there by far.
Thanks for defining it for us, Kelly. I use it every day. I've never thought about what SPSS is before. Thanks. Just so awesome. I didn't know that either.
It's big. Yeah, well, it's effective. It's a good. Yeah,
I mean, I know how to use it. I know how to do it, but just never been asked to find an acronym for it.
You didn't know what it's for.
Oh, are you kidding me? I aim for them every day.
It's national, so I'm almost positive they can talk about it.
But that just made my day.
I don't think.
I know it's really popular in Washington, I don't know if it's using specifically A plus plus.
Star is the same, we track that, it's actually more than
Don't you think that would be, like, that's probably the easiest, if you don't have to, for me, she just do something in there, last minute, now she's already done the full like, she's like, I don't know what that is. Like, in my opinion, that would be the easiest thing to do. So even if they're not using it after school, she could still, parents could throw that in there, and then she can research out there. I think that would be science.
So I think it's good, but it's very like, cause right now, there's progress on 20 of my 34 kids, and in first grade, this year is 6. That's where like fifth grade, they put the headphones on, they press go, they do the test themselves. The progress. So in first grade, I'm like, how do you want me to do this? 5 weeks to 20 kids, 2 random curriculums, when each time it takes a minimum of 20 minutes per child.
You're having.
But legally, I need to be doing. And obviously, the benefits report.
Let's come back for just a moment. Kelly had an excellent suggestion. Kelly, thank you for adding that, specifically for out-of-state students, which we have. But would you please reiterate so that everyone can see where these initiatives or these suggestions might be found in this nationwide?
So if you don't have any, if you have no idea what an initiative is and you don't really know what you're doing with that yet, a really easy one to stick in there would be MTSS, which is Multi-Tiered Systems of Support, but you're probably already using it. So like these guys are like, oh yeah, we use that every day, we didn't even know what the acronym stood for. But that's a national movement. So it's a really easy one to stick in there. So even if you're not using it at your school, but it dovetails really nicely with all the standards. So even if you're like somewhat, moving down the path with your project, it would be an easy one to just stick in there and weave into what you already have, because it's gonna coincide with everything. So it's just an easy one to throw in there.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Another fairly easy one is the social emotional academic learning is also a pretty easy one. But that may be a little bit more of a deviation, whereas MTSS has a very heavy academic focus and it aligns well with curriculum standards.
And that will help. Thank you. Excellent suggestion. Together we're better. Thank you. Very quickly, I have one more thing to say. Talking about the initiatives, we discussed possibly in the crosswalk, it is your choice, making them in bullet format. According to APA, and this is from apastyle.org, if you're using bullets not just in your initiative connection section, but also in your lesson plan, any symbol may be used for the bullets, you know that, although small circles and squares are usually the typical software defaults. But when full sentences are used in a bullet, and this is something that the professional editors will focus on, when full sentences are used in your bullet, the first words after your bullet icon should be capitalized, and an appropriate ending punctuation should be included. So a period, question mark, exclamation point, obviously probably a period. So when you use a bullet, it's a complete sentence. You need it to start with a capital letter. You need it to end. If it's just a phrase, then you're not going to put punctuation at the end.
Okay, no punctuation if it's a phrase.
If it's a phrase, but if it's a complete sentence, it is with a punctuation at the end. Last thing, I'm so impressed and so grateful. Chris, was going to give this to her class, and she brought these to us. There's been a lot of confusion between differentiation and extension. Please discuss this with your project director. You sent me a really good question. I just found it today.
Okay.
It was buried, Gianna. I apologize. But she's asking about differentiation. Differentiation is not the same as extension. Differentiation means that, very simply stated, if you are working with first grade readers, you're teaching them to read, you do a running record, you determine what level they're on, you're not going to put every student in the same reading book because they can't read it. You're going to use your assessment that is driving your instruction to determine where to place your students. If you look at your lesson and you see that it's all about writing paragraphs, but you've got some low achievers in your classroom that cannot write a complete sentence, let alone a complete paragraph, then you need to differentiate the instruction in that lesson for those low-level learners. So how will you change up your instruction to meet the needs of every student in your classroom? Also, could be for gifted, could be for SPED, could be for non-English speaking students. And
You know, one of the things that helps me when I think about differentiation are the three ways you differentiate. You either differentiate your content, or your process, the way they're gonna do it, or the product they're gonna give you at the end. And so differentiation, those are the three.
excellent, well said. I'm going to write this down.
It's right on here.
Oh,
It's right on here.
it is? I haven't even had a chance to read it. Thank you so much. Content, process, product. Content, process, product. So think about that when you look at your lesson and say, whoa, I want my students to read Gone with the Wind in first grade. Not gonna happen. Not gonna happen. Terry.
So I found a really cool technology piece that I just want to share with
Oh,
the
good.
students, that has actually really helped me with my differentiation. So has anyone heard of ClassFlow before? Okay, so I'm always trying to find like different things to give content to my students. They shut off Google Classroom, which has been like my worst nightmare ever. But you can create like a presentation or something for let's say one class period, and you can embed questions in it, and then using technology in the room, your students can either take out their phone and answer the question with the class code, or they can be a member of the class that you've set up already and answer it through the computer. But if you ask a question, it'll break them up into 3 different groups, and then you can actually look at the 3 different groups that it puts them in, and then I can decide, okay, I want to take, a 3, a 2, and a 1, and I want to put them all together and have my 3s reteach question, whatever, to the rest of the group. Or I could even put them in a group based off of like, hey, I want all of the 1s, the 2s, and the 3s together, and then I can go sit with the 1s and work with them on an assignment while like the 3s are working on like some sort of extension assignment. So it's just, I don't know, it was a really cool tool that I found, and if you're interested in that, it's like automatic feedback.
What's it called again?
ClassFlow. Yeah, and I know if you have Amplify Science, they have something that does that too, which is cool, but that's, you have to pay for it, so don't pay for it. ClassFlow. Yeah.
ClassFlow.
Yeah, I just got very excited about it the other day.
That's exciting, thank you. Absolutely. This Chris put together. Chris, tell us about this. Where'd you find it?
Well, ASCD, someday you're going to want to belong to ASCD when you have a job and lots of money. It's about $80 a year. It's the Association of Supervision and Curriculum Development and Leadership, Educational Leadership. You've probably seen articles from that journal. It's put out by ASCD. They have books. You probably read some or seen some of the books.
They post jobs.
Yeah, lots of stuff. Carol Ann Tomlinson is like the accepted guru for differentiated instruction and has written any number of books. I mean, probably 20 books. And this is like a really great summation, easy to read, quick lookup to see. This is called a quick reference guide, and ASCD has them on all sorts of topics. stop by my office one day if you want to see, because I believe I have them all. And I figure since I purchased them, I have the freedom to copy them.
And you belong. Jim always belonged to
Yeah.
ASCD as an administrator. And he found it very, well, I was always peeking on his website, right?
Yeah, they've got tons of good stuff.
It's good stuff, and Ed Leadership is not just one of those journals that any Yahoo can submit an article to. It is a juried, and even Amy Burton was turned down.
Dr.
But the
Amy-
fact that she submitted is, that in itself, when I heard that she submitted, I was like,
Yeah.
oh, you're cool. Like, I was so
I want
impressed.
to do that.
Yeah, that was like life goals.
Before I die.
Life goals right
It's a
there.
bucket list.
Yeah, life goals right there.
So differentiation, in a nutshell, we've mentioned it, read it over. Thank you, Ann, for bringing up the
Ann.
three
Oh,
processes, and Chris.
My personal experience, I had been told many, many times by my administrator that I was not differentiating. And I would pull out Carol Ann Tomlinson and say, yeah, I am. So you can use this as evidence that you are differentiating, because not all principals understand what that means.
Oh, that's me.
Excuse me, Jim is smirking in the back.
I'm just reading.
What do you say?
I'm
What
just
did you
reading.
say? Oh, you couldn't hear? Okay, sorry.
Oh, nothing, nothing.
He's not. Oh, nothing is, oh, no. Actually, he was the one, when I brought it up, when differentiation, extension, et cetera, way back when I was teaching in my early years. And we sat down one night and we discussed it. And he had some excellent analogies to explain it, definitely. So he was a principal, assistant superintendent who knew what it was. So there are some out there. Yay! All righty. A quick,
So what
yeah,
did you say about
Maureen.
extensions then?
So extensions, hopefully you're to a point in writing your lessons where you say, oh, I could have done this, or I could have done this. But you don't want to create another lesson plan, nor should you create another lesson plan. So how could you extend that lesson? If you're integrating art into math, then maybe you're doing watercolors of your math computations, but you could also maybe make them in clay or pastels or whatever. So what else can you do to extend the lesson? It is not differentiated for different levels of learners. It's just simply stated, what else can you do? How can you extend it? How can you take it a bit further? Could they, instead of just writing out their play, then they could act out their play? The
So in the perfect world, if you had all the time to
Absolutely.
do what you wanted,
Right.
what would you do?
In the classroom. And don't forget, Anne, it's the perfect students too.
It is.
Yeah.
Oh, there's no
Perfect.
misbehaving.
Always, never, no problems, no problems. Lorraine?
So extensions and or differentiations, do they have to have a rubric or do they have to be graded?
No, they do not. Thank you. I was going to answer Deanna's question and I didn't. They do not need a rubric. They do not need to be graded. And they're probably only going to be a short paragraph of 3 or 4 sentences. Not much at all.
So like one of my extensions is like a different game that would kind of be like next, you know, like,
Sure, yeah, exactly.
I mean, with Google, like do I need to say like how to play the game or can I just say, play this game?
Well, don't just say
I
play
mean,
this
yeah,
game.
but you know what I mean?
But-
Like, do I need to go into like a whole explanation of how to play that extended game?
No, but you could give the link.
That's what I was, okay, so I
Then
can say like refer to blah, blah, blah for more information.
Instead of using tennis balls and basketballs, for this game,
Yeah.
use baseballs and soccer balls. See this link.
Okay,
So give us enough of an
Yeah.
explanation to whet our appetite, but also tell us where it can be found.
okay,
Okay.
because I was like, I'm not gonna waste a whole paragraph.
No,
How
you
to
don't
play
need
the
to, no.
Okay.
Miriam,
So then we don't need to include like the worksheets for the extension either, right?
you can if you want.
But we have to.
You do not have to, but you might want to, because you're avoiding having to write a whole new lesson plan. But if you're extending it, you might want to include something that's creative to put in there. You might do that. Melissa?
This might be something I learned a long time ago, but I'm still really confused about connections to past learning or experiences. I've always done it where I'm talking about parts, so students probably will have an idea what a part is. So I
Right.
write that down, but then I don't.
An extension might be to take them to the park.
No, I have that for an extension. I don't know
Okay.
how to fill out the connections to past learning. Like, is it all the skills that they need to have before they do the lesson? Is it what we did in the previous unit? Is it
It's-
what they did in 6th grade? Is it?
All of the above.
So this could end up being like a page long.
No, it should only be a short paragraph, because you're connecting previous background knowledge to this lesson. They should be familiar with what a park is,
Right.
because they went to a park in 4th grade and now they're in 5th grade. Exactly, so then that might be your teaching. Yeah, good thought.
But like as far as, the standards, do I have to list all the standards that they should have learned in like a different grade? Or
No.
like, because like my unit is not the very first unit of the 7th grade. It's like probably the 4th or 5th unit, so they've already learned proportions. Do I write that?
From previous learning, right.
If it's related,
Review
like
it.
students have mastered how to, or
Right.
students have learned how to use proportions properly in blah, blah, blah.
From previous lessons. It doesn't, let's look at that, yeah.
Yeah, well,
All right, any other questions?
I found my page, my specific
Good,
question.
all right, I'll be right there. I'll try to work the room and get to all your individual questions. You're not scratching your head, Rob? Do you have a
Saying
question?
we're going out there.
Okay, good.
Don't
Thank
forget
you.
about us.
I won't forget, I'll come out and say hi, all right. Thank you all so much, I went way over as usual, I do apologize. But I hope you're meeting with your project directors, and I'm hearing good things, I'm excited, I really am. Okay. Okay.
I pulled all my student bonds, like, ignore my notes.
Okay.